This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake.
And I'm Kate Young.
Hey, Kate, have you ever been to the Eugene V. Debs Museum over in Terre Haute?
I haven't, but his name has been in the news a lot lately.
Yeah, it has been. He was quoted by Zoran Mamdani after he was elected mayor of New York.
And didn't Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez go to Terre Haute a few weeks before that?
I think they did. Sanders received the Eugene Debs Award. And since his name's been in the news lately, I thought maybe we should have Alex catch us up on who exactly was Eugene Debs.
Not a bad idea, Tyler. What else do you have planned for the show?
Well, I checked out Orbit Room and the crazy number of events they do there.
Yeah, and we have a story about a one-of-a-kind movie screening from Nice Work intern Danny William.
And you and I went to an art show in an empty house in Bryant Park.
We did, and that is a lot, and so we should probably get started. This is Nice Work.
This is Nice Work. I'm Alex Chambers. Here's a question you've probably been wondering about. Which house in Terre Haute, Indiana, has the most followers on Twitter? I think it's safe to say it's the one on North 8th Street, surrounded by Indiana State University parking lots just south of the marching band's practice fields. It's the Eugene V. Debs Museum. Long before it was a museum, it was the home of Eugene V. and Kayte Debs. 100 years ago, Eugene Debs was the most famous socialist in the U.S. He was the presidential candidate for the Socialist Party's first 5 attempts. 5 times. Gives you a sense of how well he did on that front. The last time he ran, he was in prison. He got 6% of the vote. At the time, it seemed not bad for a convict. Now it's a museum dedicated to the memory of the most popular American socialist before Bernie Sanders. Debs is also, along with Larry Bird, who got his start playing basketball for ISU, one of Terre Haute's most famous sons. Debs has also been in the news lately. When Zoran Mamdani won the New York City mayoral election, he started his victory speech with a quote from Debs.
"The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity."
Just a couple of weeks before that, Senator Bernie Sanders came to Terre Haute to receive the Eugene Debs Award. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came too to introduce him and help celebrate. And that's why we've decided to bring back a story I did in the fall of 2024 about Debs and the museum devoted to him. I released that on Interstates. That was the podcast I was producing for WFIU, and I'm happy to bring it to Nice Work. I will warn you, though, it is more history than art. All right, back to the story. This particular house's online presence raises some questions. How is the Twitter account of a small Midwestern museum devoted to a figure who died a century ago doing as well as it is? Who's behind this Twitter account? If the person who runs it is also the director of the museum, and she got the job straight out of college, and she's been there happily, nay, devotedly, for 8 years now, what makes you devote your livelihood to the memory of a guy who died a century ago? Especially if he's not a religious figure. How long does it take to get to Terre Haute? Turns out it's about an hour and a quarter if you live in Bloomington. I should have checked that before I left. Luckily, Allison Dirk, who does indeed run the museum, and the slightly less important in the scheme of things Twitter account, was also running late.
Hello.
Good morning. I'm going to turn it over to Allison in just a second here, but I want to note that I think it's a measure of her devotion to Debs and the museum that she spoke in the first person plural when she apologized for being late.
Thank you so much for your patience. I hope we didn't keep you waiting.
No, not at all.
Okay, coming up, we'll walk through Terre Haute, learn what got Allison hooked on Debs, and even learn a bit about Debs himself along the way. And we'll come very close to stopping at Jimmy John's for sandwiches. When Allison came to Terre Haute for college, she didn't expect to get so embedded in the place, its present and its past.
All these different places, like where Gene grows up, where the store was, where Kate's family ran the business, like I spent kind of some time there, like some real time, honestly.
Right, exactly.
So I thought we would walk down 8th Street.
Okay.
We can talk about the other houses on the block. It only happened because of Debs, basically. Like 120 years ago, he and hundreds of other people got together in Chicago to co-found the one big union, the Industrial Workers of the World. I'm wearing their shirt right now, for the whole working class. No matter what your job is, what you look like, where you're from, if you are of the working class, if you're not a boss, you can join this union, even if you don't technically have a job, or if you're a migrant worker, if you're an itinerant worker, whatever. And students too, like that means students as well, like we are workers.
What is your sense of what Debs means in the community of Terre Haute at this point?
Yeah, it's still a mixed bag, honestly. Like, there are great local supporters who show up for everything we ask them to. There are still people who never thought this house should have been kept as a museum. Like, I see mostly on social media. I don't really see it in person. Like, people who will comment that the Debs house should have been torn down 60 years ago or whatever. People who think that Debs was, what's the word I want to use? Well, okay, in the big picture, there is this narrative out there in the atmosphere that, like, Terre Haute deindustrialized and declined because of its supposedly violent labor history. And, like, we did have a general strike. We did have and still have unions, but that's not really unique to Terre Haute either. People like to compare us to Bloomington and, like, well, why didn't we become this fabulous well-resourced community that Bloomington did? And I'm like, well, we don't have a Big Ten school either. Like, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, like, our economy was built around industry that left for pursuit of profit. And I'm not the first one to say this, but no union ever shut down a mine or closed a factory or fired its workers. Like, that's not how that works, right?
But for unions to get enough power that people would even think to blame them for lost jobs, something had to happen. You needed people with a vision for what a union could accomplish. In the 19th century, Terre Haute was gathering the ingredients to produce a person like that.
Terre Haute gets on the map because of Fort Harrison. I mean, the word Terre Haute, or words Terre Haute, come from French for high ground, which refers to an elevated site along the Wabash River that was the site of Fort Harrison, an important staging ground in the Battle of Tippecanoe. Jean's parents, Daniel and Daisy Debs, were French immigrants from Colmar, Alsace, or Alsace, came over in the late 1840s and found about 5,000 German immigrants here in Terre Haute in the 1850s. We're also beginning to industrialize, and Terre Haute also gets on the map as a transportation hub. The river, the national road, and the railroads become the three factors that make Terre Haute the transportation hub it would become. For a brief period in the later part of the 19th century, the population roughly doubles by the decade. So one of these classic Midwestern boom towns is really what Daniel and Daisy find themselves in when they arrive and build their family in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Terre Haute was not so much a boom town when Allison arrived in the early 21st century.
I came to Terre Haute for music education, like band stuff. I wanted to be a band director and wave my arms around for a long time. And a lot of people around me, family members, were encouraging me to consider a different route because education, this is, 2012, 2013, like, it was a rough scene for sure. So I got really interested in, like, the policy side of that. I was a social work major for a semester and had to take a state and local government class, and that's really what, like, got me back into political science as my major.
How did the state and local government class, in particular, turn you on to all this?
It was a way to kind of connect, like, my individual, maybe, like, political views or experiences to systems, if that makes sense, and, like, how, we fight for policy change, but also, like, how unresponsive our systems are too. I was doing a research job for an awesome historian at ISU, Lisa Phillips, who's, like, a board officer for us too. And as part of that work, she had me do tours at the house one night a week just as a student to keep it open while they were between staff. And that was, like, as I was joining the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, and, like, I mentioned, like, going to my first union training, and it all kind of fell into place. And right when it was time to graduate, they were putting out their job posting. And so it was, like, time to apply for the real gig, and it worked out.
And in some ways, you were maybe one of the biggest fans.
You could say that. I was getting on my way, at least. I have definitely met bigger Debs heads than myself at this point, but we do call ourselves Debs heads too, for sure. You get it, but at least I insist that we do.
The Debs heads see a guy with a vision that involved workers themselves owning the resources that powered the economy. But Debs himself didn't start out thinking that way.
Everything we're looking at right now used to be the Chauncey Rose Farm and Orchard. So like Chauncey Rose was like an early financier. I think he was a railroad owner in Terre Haute too. He was like actually a boss that Debs looked up to as like living in their own communities and like having to see the consequences of the wages that they pay and like putting more back into the community. But as owners like are no longer in your neighborhood or the next neighborhood over, whatever, Debs became less and less confident that employers could be trusted to do the responsible thing for the people who make them rich.
That's because more and more the owners themselves didn't live where their companies operated.
Controlling interests in utility companies were sold to national corporations in like Boston and Chicago, for example. Even as Gene was a national labor union figure, the union existed to pay for funerals. It was not going after employers for massive concessions. It wasn't trying to change systems or reconfigure how an economy could work or whatever. It wasn't like militant necessarily. And for a long time, it was anti-strike, and Debs was too. He really thought that like with responsible employers, strong unions, and
responsible employers like the ones that he saw here in Terre Haute.
Yeah, exactly. That he thought he saw. Yeah. And like laws from a responsive democracy, like we could curb the excess of capital, and that, that capitalism would not be equal by definition. It's in the word, but it might be livable. It should be livable if we, I don't want to just say put constraints around it, but yeah, basically put some curbs around it. As far as like what is kind of waking Debs up to all this too, like he's seeing, for example, like maybe some limited success with strikes, but Debs was pretty anti-strike for like the first almost like half of his life, really. His first union was really conservative. Again, like only open to white men, but also not demanding much from employers either. We are just fighting for a fair day's wage for a fair day's work, which is like the classic labor motto from this era, which in some ways does persist today too. So like if the switchmen go on strike for a fair wage, you could pretty much bet the anti-strike firemen and engineers are going to cross the picket line. And all an employer has to do is get scabs or strike breakers for one kind of worker. And that's pretty easy. Like you probably are not going to win that way. But seeing this happen over and over and over in different forms convinces Debs that if we don't want to starve in the next century, we're going to have to find a way to counter this growing corporate power. If the railroads can combine and amass their influence, then why can't the unions do the exact same thing?
So you were kind of starting to learn all this in these classes.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, so as a student and as a band member, like I was in the marching band and the basketball band here, and all 4 years that I was at ISU, we never got a scholarship or a stipend, which is how it often is, but not always how it is. And this is a working class campus, right? I knew from like experience with friends at other schools that there is money out there for like real compensation for the work that we're doing. And like I said, as a working class campus, like we knew our fellow students would have to quit an ensemble halfway through the semester to maybe work to support themselves to get through, which is not at all uncommon. But it also, in a case like marching band where you have drill, like everybody has a spot, like that can, I didn't think about that. Yeah, it affects everybody in some way. So we were able to start organizing basically, and we formed a band members association, and we did research on other schools, and we were able to kind of educate and agitate, and like you might sort of say organize with our fellow students to say, it doesn't have to be like this. We're working really like a significant part-time job doing this, and maybe giving up the chance to go earn wages somewhere else, or our study time or our social time or whatever else, and connecting to people over like their individual struggles. Like that's how this is done. And it's working. Like we're on the field, we're taking our water breaks, we're walking back to our buildings after rehearsals or whatever, and then we started having meetings, and like we had agendas, and we took minutes, and we kind of kept it under the radar for a while because we didn't want to get like found out and get in trouble or something for being agitators. But in the end, like our the staff in the School of Music, the faculty in the School of Music were really, really supportive. And within a couple of years, and after kind of getting this up to the administrative level, they have a generous scholarship. And I think it's expanding right now to, I want to say, non-majors too. And like we did it. It was honestly exciting. It brought me closer with my friends to be part of this collective effort, which is really what it's all about. And that's what our bands are about too, is the collective effort. Like one person playing music, sure, that's fun, but it feels like practice really. For what's actually, to me, the most rewarding is the collective effort of dozens of people, maybe hundreds of people on a field or in a rehearsal room or on a stage, like getting to share with an audience the fruits of our labor, basically.
Allison played the mellophone in marching band. If she and her fellow mellophonists? Anyway, if they had decided their conditions were unworkable and they were going to sit out football games until they had access to better spit valves, it seems like it'd be pretty easy for the marching band's corporate board to just bring in extra euphonium players. Not the same, I know, but close enough if you're trying to keep a tight horn budget. With those euphonium scabs crossing the line, the mellophone strike would fail. Eugene Debs foresaw that problem. Maybe not in relation to mellophoners, per se. So he realizes that A, we probably have to be able to strike, and B, we're only going to be able to effectively strike if we are organized across the whole industry rather than having like the firemen be able to go run the switches. And so he starts to think about that and then makes something happen.
Basically, like the idea of all different workers on a railroad line striking together would have been pretty, I don't want to say entirely unthinkable, but a pretty big advancement in how strikes could be organized. And so, like the Great Northern Railroad, Minneapolis, St. Paul to Seattle, was going to cut wages for the lowest paid so-called unskilled maintenance workers. The rest of this union was now strongest in the American West, recognized if they can do it to maintenance, the bosses can do it to the rest of us. We don't have to stand for it. So when talks fell through, Jim Hill wouldn't come to the table, the railroad's president refused to bargain, they shut the entire thing down. And it only worked because the engineers and the engine cleaners can strike together in one union. They actually refused to scab on each other, and it worked. You've got to get vast majorities in support of your goals if you're going to get real change. I had my share of friends who struggled with sexual violence in college, and seeing just abysmal response to that. Like, it really personally affected me. And, you know, a few of us got together to form a feminist organization on campus, and that was cool, but we don't want to be siphoned off either and like just work with students who might consider themselves feminists. Like, how do we broaden out? A few students can go to administration or this or that body and get left out or told they'll send it to a committee, and then it's by the next semester like forgotten about or whatever. But when you've got whole majorities on board for a demand, that's undeniable.
Also undeniable is the fact that it was getting on toward lunchtime. Allison and I were headed toward the crossroads of America and the downtown Jimmy John's in Terre Haute, which is where Eugene Debs first read Les Mis. It wasn't a Jimmy John's at the time.
I thought we might head downtown,
Sure.
Just across the road here. We are gonna come up here on the crossroads of America, so that's why I wanted to head this way.
Great.
I think they're setting up for Blues Fest, but I'm not totally sure. We're looking at 7th and Wabash. So 7th Street is US 41. That's actually DuSable Lakeshore Drive, like up in Chicago. Like, if technically the actual highway is now 3rd Street, but this is the old route of US 41. Cool. And then Wabash Avenue is US 40, basically. But that would connect us to Indy. It's Washington Street in Indianapolis, and would connect us to the state capitol and out to St. Louis. But yeah, that's the old 7th and Wabash.
Trains are also pretty significant here, right?
Oh yeah. Eugene Debs' first jobs were working for the Terre Haute and Indianapolis Railroad as a painter and as a locomotive fireman. That's where he starts to see firsthand these just brutal conditions that left widows with no choice but to remarry as quick as they could, to not let the kids starve. And it's, of course, like you could call the lifeblood of the nation or whatever.
Lifeblood or not, the tracks run pretty close to a historically significant sandwich shop.
Did you want a sandwich? Is that... maybe like to go. I'm not like really hungry yet.
Yeah, I'm
like,
not actually. Maybe I should get one later, but we should go over there at least.
We can walk by it at least.
We should definitely walk by it.
It's kind of like, like construction workers or operators, like they'll point out to their kids like, I paved that sidewalk or I built that building or whatever. And I'm like, I delivered a sandwich there. I delivered a sandwich there. They were bad tippers. They were great tippers, whatever. But here's our Jimmy John's Freaky Fast gourmet sandwiches. This is the old site of the Debs grocery store where Gene Debs grew up. So we're at the corner of 11th and Wabash on the northeast corner. On busy days during the lunch rush, we just pull the car up right here. Sometimes the manager would run the bags of food out for us so we could just take off from that. Nice. Usually we had to go back in though.
Was it fun?
It could be, yeah. When people tipped well. It was nice to like be on your feet, and it was kind of gamified too. Like, will you get a tip this time? Will you not? But like, what was difficult was we made $7.25 or $6.25 plus our tips. So there, like, eventually this changed, but we didn't get like a mileage reimbursement. It was just kind of like you can claim it on your taxes if you want to keep track of it, but other than that, you get to keep your tips. And because we don't make you report the cash ones, then that it's like that was considered the quid pro quo, basically. So that was rough. Debs really understood America as a land of plenty. Like, climate change is its own huge piece of the puzzle to fit in here, but we are on top of coal and oil deposits. We have so much land to go around. Like, we should, Debs thought, be able to feed and house and educate and care for all of us. He thought we could have like 1 billion people in the United States and still be able to care for everybody with how many resources we have at our disposal if they could be used and distributed equally, or on the basis of need and use instead of on the basis of what's profitable. Debs saw coal shortages that were manufactured, families going cold, going hungry in the winter, even while there's enough coal under our feet, for example, to keep us all warm, because it wasn't profitable to mine that coal. And instead, workers were kept idle as unemployed. And he saw the system as only benefiting a few at the very, very top to maintain and protect their profits at the expense of the well-being of the rest of us. And that is why Debs was campaigning on industry operated for need and use instead of for profit.
And he got pretty popular with that.
In a sense, he was marginal, but,
relatively speaking, pretty
it's
popular.
all relative, right? Yeah. And I mean, like, the fact that Debs, at his peak, did earn 6% of the popular vote in 1912, that is nothing to laugh at or sneeze at, I guess, in like our first past the post voting system, where it's really, really hard for third parties to make inroads compared to these two strong parties that dominate the system. The fact that Debs is able to get even numbers like that is remarkable in its own right. It's not like you just run up to the front door. Like, you'd have to go into their dorm and hopefully they'd be waiting for you in their lobby. And if they're not, you can't go up in the elevator. That's against the rules. So you'd have to call them and wait for them to come down. And the longer you're waiting, the more you're missing out on the next delivery. That could be a real tip too. Like, if I didn't get tipped, it was like I paid for the gas to bring them their food, basically, on a $7.25, on a minimum wage. Like, if you're listening outside of the state, like, send help. Like, we're still $7.25 an hour here. We're standing right where, like, the store was up front and they lived in the back. So, like, this was the home base for Gene Debs, his parents, his 4 sisters, and his younger brother. This is where he's reading Les Mis, over and over in French, and reading Thomas Paine and Patrick Henry and all the rest too, and like developing this huge, huge love for Abraham Lincoln, which, who among us, but this is where it really all started. At the time of his sentencing, Debs gave a speech that he thought might have been his last public address. Honestly, he, at least outside of a jail or a prison, Debs was facing a 10-year sentence and knew he would not survive 10 or 20 years behind bars. So he said, "Your Honor, years ago, I recognized my kinship with all living beings and made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the meanest or lowest on earth. I said then and I say now that while there's a lower class, I am in it, while there is a criminal element, I am of it, and while there is a soul in prison, I am not free."
So it's 11:30. I want to give you a little bit of time to transition.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. I'll get my pop out of the car.
I feel like maybe the last thing I want to ask, or last kind of idea, is about what it's meant to you over the years now to be working here. Like, it was exciting when you started. Kind of how have things changed for you? How has your thinking changed? What have you learned?
The significance of, like, what's the word I want? Like a long-term commitment to something. It's not, I feel like it's very normal to, like, stay in your first, like, grown-up job for as long as I have. Like, they tell you, like, on the websites, whatever, that you're supposed to transition after a few years so you don't get pigeonholed or whatever. And I mean, sure. But also, like, being able to have been here for so many years, I get to see the same people coming back and bringing their friends, bringing their family, kids who look a lot different when they come back the next time with their parents. And then they get to, like, appreciate and enjoy a little bit more and connect with more than they would have when they were younger visiting. Being able to, like, build relationships, friendships with people in the community and organizations around Terre Haute too has been super, super valuable. It gets richer and, like, deeper, I guess, with age too. I'm not trying to say, like, I'm richer or whatever. Like, I mean, I feel emotionally richer because of it or whatever, but it becomes more meaningful to me having had more time to, like, sit and absorb it, honestly. And I think that can come through as being, like, more meaningful for our visitors and volunteers and everyone who works with us too.
Do you still eat Jimmy John's?
Rarely. Sometimes I get a craving and I might get a drive-through at the other shop. But also, like, I have ordered delivery over to the house from here, but I try to tip very, very generously, and that's how I can, like, live with it. I really hope that, like, Terre Haute and the people here can see Debs as, like, a symbol of optimism too. And I'm not trying to water down his radicalism, but, like, he really did believe that a better world is possible, like, always, no matter how bad it gets. That the midnight is passing and joy comes with the morning, and all it takes is all of us coming together to fight for what we know is right.
And that's how the Interstates episode ended. If you enjoyed it, we'll continue to have stories like that on Nice Work as well. Follow us on your favorite podcast app and give us a rating and review while you're at it. It'll help other people find it. And when you do, tell us what you've been up to while you listen. Like, maybe you decided to take a road trip and you downloaded a bunch of your favorite podcasts. Aw. And you also grabbed the latest Nice Work. Oh, thanks. And about an hour after you crossed over into Indiana on US 40, among the vast, flat expanse of cornfields east of Indianapolis, your mind started racing, trying to figure out what you're going to owe on your taxes next year. Another one of your accounting spirals. And you realized you needed to calm down. And normally when you start running the 1040 in your head, you just go over to a dispensary and then a hotel. You're not going to keep driving. You're responsible. But there are no dispensaries in Indiana. So you found a rest stop and pulled in and just started praying to whatever higher being might be out there, muttering over and over.
If you're listening outside of the state, send help.
And nothing happened. Until you thought, wherever you go, there you are. And so you turned on a podcast from inside the state, and Allison Dirk's passion for Eugene Debs calmed you right down. Like that. Give us a rating and a story. Okay, Interstates always ended with a quick moment of slow radio. That's next.
Are you trying 13 punch out? Let's get Italian wrap. Number 3, totally tuna.
Thanks.
We'll have to in just a second.
That was Waiting for a Sandwich at Jimmy John's, Terre Haute, Indiana. I'm Alex Chambers, and this is Nice Work.
There are a handful of good places to see shows here in Bloomington. A lot of them happen to start with B, oddly, but we're not talking about any of those right now. Now we're talking about Orbit Room. And if you don't know, Orbit Room sits just down a set of stairs on the west side of the square. When you get to the bottom of those stairs, you see a small room to the left, lit up and noisy with a handful of pinball machines. And when you walk into the space, you see it's small. Brick walls, an unreal amount of beverage offerings, talk of the town great hot dogs, and to the left there's a small stage that's uncommonly busy. I caught a show there the other night. Well, actually, I went to get a hot dog, and a show started, and I stuck around. The room filled up pretty quickly, and soon enough I saw a lot of people I know and a lot of people who know each other. It was buzzy, and everyone was chatting, tables talking to other tables, people catching up for the first time in a while, hugs were thrown around. It was special, but for Orbit Room, not unusual. It's a special kind of place. And a place like that needs tended just like a garden. Co-owner Mike Klinge, I think, does a good deal of that tending, and I think it keeps him pretty busy. But he carved out a few minutes to talk to me at Orbit Room. All right, headed down. Hey, Mike. Not too bad. How you doing?
All right.
We sat down in the space right next to the stage. And I say space instead of bar because I'd always thought about it as a bar, but I don't think Mike sees it exactly that way.
Orbit Room is an event space that has amazing gourmet hot dogs and pinball machines that is in downtown Bloomington. It's all ages, most events, and it's open mostly Tuesday through Saturday. We do have beer and wine and sake and ciders and seltzers and tons of non-alcoholic options as well. I don't know, there's probably 50 or 60 different beverage options on a given night. Not all on tap, but like some on tap, some in cans and bottles. We kind of came up with this idea of Orbit is this thing where we go out of our way to find things that you can't. We cross the galaxy to look for these things that we think are exceptional that maybe aren't getting a spotlight on them, or they're ones that everybody just knows is great.
Then I went on for way too long about the different shows and events I'd been to in that space, and then I made him describe all the things you could see.
That is definitely kind of a broad spectrum. Still keeping with the thought of like we try to seek out and find things that we really are interested in, think people should see in Bloomington. So we do go and try to find touring acts that maybe Bloomington isn't on their radar to come to, and then once they come here, they love it. But like everything from Americana, jazz, a ton of different jazz with the Jacobs School in town. We have films. We have a folklore night where that's basically a different talk subject regarding folklore and ethnomusicology once a month. We have a night market where we have art vendors. We have rock bands here too, kind of all over the place, including with the discussion type talks of like, we do like astronomy on tap with IU astronomy sometimes. But it's such a smallish space that we can kind of accommodate all kinds of interesting events that people would feel apprehensive about trying to fill like a 200-person room or even a 100-person room when you know, the event they could have would really thrive with 30 people watching it, you know.
It's a small space to do all that. The fire department clears it for just under 50 people. And I gotta think it wasn't built as an event space. So I started asking Mike what had been there before.
Oh, it's been so many things, but the last thing right before, I was in California for years and I moved back and we came back into town and I walked by this space and I was kind of familiar because it was a music studio back in the early 2000s and there was a sign and it was a magician's theater and I was like, that's really cool. There was like a show on Friday and Saturdays of this magician here and it was pretty amusing to hear some of the stories of the magic shows in here. They were entertaining to say the least, I think. But it's been a lot of things. I think we're one of the longer. Being 7 now, I think we're hitting one of the longer tenured of the last 40 years here.
Eventually, I started asking Mike what business has been like at Orbit Room.
If everyone is spending less and that's the attitude and mentality of everyone right now, including myself, like it's 30% difference in sales to a place that only is making 10% profit on total is like an insane amount, which is kind of how restaurants and especially music venues are set up. So if you're listening to this, go see some shows. For most touring bands, it's 15. The lowest is 10, and it goes up to 25. I think is about the most expensive we've done. That basically is what we figured out can help us keep everyone getting something at the end of the night. The majority of the box office is going strictly to the bands and the production of the bands, like a sound person or a door person, things like that. So it's not like we create this stream of profit completely from just a box office. It's just more just like make ends meet.
So it is tough. It's fraught. But what keeps you coming back?
One, I don't know any better. Two, you hit it with the nail on the head. It's like I at least get to see these performances or do sound for them, you know, mixing 100 plus shows a year or being at over 150 shows a year. I like that. It's something I've always loved doing. I've been playing music since I was like 18. That is definitely the part that makes it easy. And also everyone in the community of Bloomington, Indiana. The only reason we're still here is that people want us to be here and get our back anytime we need it. My wife and I moved, Katie Novotny, one of the other owners of Orbit, moved back from Oakland, California, and when we came back to town, there was like 0 pinball machines in town. Like there was one at like the laundromat, and then there was some in the Union, but we were like, what's going on? And because the Bay Area is like every single dive bar has one. So it just kind of became this thing. It was like, we should find some pinball machines. And now we have like a league, and actually some of the top-ranked players in the state practice here every Tuesday. So we've got 6 pinball machines. We do rotate them, but they've been kind of the standard rotation for about 7 months, I think. The newest one is from 2021, I think. And then the oldest would be this Argosy, this electromagnetic one.
Hanging out in the pinball room reminded me to talk to Mike about something the city of Bloomington needs more of and Orbit Room offers. All-age spaces for events and performances.
We live in this artistic town but it's pretty separate, you know. It's not exactly like if you don't work at IU, you're not going to just usually wander on to see a thing at our hall so your child can see this and like how well is it received for a toddler to be in a fancy auditorium to hear this, or you know, we love going to the Busker, go there all the time, but like it's definitely like one of those like, let's all calm down a little bit. Theater. To be a little more rowdy, be like, oh, they're going there flipping pinballs, and you know the parents over here watching the show, and then go back and forth a little bit. So if people are missing seeing music, and one of the reasons is because they can't bring their kids somewhere with them, we're your spot. As kids get older too, like just seeing people get interested in pinball, especially, it's been fun. Seeing kids get better at pinball and wanting to come back and play more, like seeing people get into a hobby like that, or just coming out to see the same show each month, since we have several shows that are like this band plays this Saturday every month. Or the most fun probably has been, and it's been a little on a hiatus, but the Youth Revolution was this thing Matt Lundquist put together at the Project School, and it was basically this band of all Project School kids that wrote all their own songs, recorded all of them, and we were like their like local venue. They played, gosh, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 times I feel like here. And it was packed the place with parents and friends, and like two of them just sat in with like the REM tribute band the other night and got up and played a song with them. And like this is all from them like being in a rock band and then having a place to go play it in public, and just that kind of stuff is really makes us happy.
Thanks to Mike Klinge for showing me around, and you can find out what's up at Orbit Room at orbitbtown.com. Oh, and Mike wanted me to remind everyone, Orbit Room goes really big around the holidays.
We decorate like crazy. We've been going around getting the most gaudy, tacky, awesome holiday decorations. We got them last year and we've beefed them up even a little bit this year. And so for basically Thanksgiving through the New Year, this place will look like a crazy person's Christmas.
Thanks, Mike. This is Nice Work, and I'm Tyler Lake. This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake.
And I'm Kate Young. Tyler, do you find yourself getting out and seeing a lot of silent films these days?
You know I don't. I actually prefer the talkies. But Nice Work intern Danny William went to one recently, and they came back with this story.
When you think of indie movies, you're probably thinking of something like Clerks or Napoleon Dynamite. What you're probably not thinking of is a 100-year-old film. But you should be, because it is. On November 15th, I made my way to the Indiana University Cinema to experience just that. 10 Nights in a Barroom is a 1926 silent film following Joe Morgan, who turns to alcohol and spirals into despair and anger. It's adapted from Timothy Shea Arthur's 1854 novel and stage adaptation. As you might expect from the time period, the story was a landmark in the temperance movement. But why are we watching a 100-year-old film? I asked IU Cinema director Dr. Alicia Kozma.
The one from 1926 is really unique, not just because it's its 100th anniversary, but because it is one of the two surviving films from a all-black independent production company called the Colored Players Film Corporation of Philadelphia.
The Colored Players Film Corporation of Philadelphia was founded in 1926. 10 Nights was their first film.
They were particularly interested in creating an alternative version of Hollywood where they could produce films with all black casts and without what they saw as the black stereotypes that were kind of all over Hollywood then and quite frankly still are now. Lots of audiences don't really consider the types of independent filmmaking that were happening during the silent era.
About 3/4 of all silent films are now lost. For the ones that survive, they're a fascinating look into the past.
There's something very comforting in knowing that what we go through now, people were also going through 100 years ago, and they made it okay. We are still filing into a big room in the dark and watching it with a bunch of strangers the same way that they did 100 years ago.
And I have to agree. With a live audience, the film came alive. The crowd laughed when a woman pleaded with local troublemaker Sample Switchell to stop fighting because he was behind on his life insurance. Audience members awed when Joe Morgan's plucky daughter made her way into the bar to save her father's soul. But the IU Cinema didn't just screen 10 Nights, it performed it.
It's a really exciting project to see anything that was from before myself or even before my mentors were born and see it come to life with a new score.
Alongside the film, the cinema showcased a brand new score by Jamie Guzman. She's a student at the Jacobs School of Music. The screening was part of the John Vickers Scoring Award, where Jacobs students write a new score for a silent film.
When I'm writing a film score, I get after the character's interiority, a lot of the same way that I would when I'm giving them lyrics to sing. Instead of lyrics, I just get to write the notes and the rhythms and the harmonies that are in their head that are part of their emotions.
But this time, she took it one step further.
What if they got to sing their thoughts as well? No one had ever done this as part of a Vickers Scoring Award before, but I said, I think it has to be this.
This 100-year-old film is now a musical. But this edition didn't break the spell. Even with music from 2025, the theater was full of jazz tunes that Philadelphia audiences in 1926 would have been familiar with.
As a white Hispanic composer, I really wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking over their voices, and especially in making it a musical, I did not want to just insert myself so heavy-handedly over what these artists, these actors and directors already did. The answer that I really found for myself through this process was go back to the amazing Black artists that were creating music at that time.
Jamie also used the previous adaptations of 10 Nights as a base.
In that play, the moment where little Mary walks to the barroom on her own and sings, "Father, dear Father, come home with me now." That song existed after the play was forgotten, and it became the face of the women's temperance movement after that. It had this entire life. Mary's theme in my score is drawn from the tag of that original song.
All of these elements create a conversation. Long distance, yes, over roughly 99 years, but a conversation nonetheless between the original creators and the audience today. That leaves one element, the live performance. With the student orchestra, and this year's singers, the film truly can only be experienced once. When I asked Alicia why they do it live, she had one thing to say.
I mean, why not do it live, Dan?
Okay, fair.
When you have a film and the audio is static, you can't really communicate with the audience. But when we have a live orchestra, we're really drawing on the energy from the audience.
You get that really interesting mix of old and new that produces a third thing that they will only be able to experience once. So it's ephemeral in that way too. It's very fleeting.
And isn't all film? We take it for granted now. Every film ever made is practically at our fingertips. But imagine walking into a theater in 1926 Philadelphia and seeing 10 Nights for the first time. I might have been feeling about the same emotions I did in 2025 on a cold autumn night in Bloomington. For Nice Work, I'm Danny William.
Hey, Tyler, before we go, can we talk about that art show that we went to a couple weeks ago?
The one in the empty house over in Bryant Park?
Yeah, Faye Gleiser put the whole thing together in 2 weeks. I mean, she had some help, but she was the instigator and the curator.
Who is Faye Gleiser?
She's an art historian at IU, and Allison Quantz hosted the show in her house, a house that she'd only just received the keys to.
Yeah, it seemed like nothing was moved in yet. Perfect opportunity for an art show. But it was also a fundraiser too, right?
Yeah, the whole concept behind the show was a response to the cutting of SNAP benefits during the government shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Tendings, and it was thinking about the ways in which we might come together to care for one another when systems fail us.
Basically, it was a house full of contemporary art made by local creators. So, Kate, what did you think? Can you set the scene for us?
Yeah, so it was an empty house in Bryant Park, and basically each room of the house was turned into a little gallery. Different artists in different rooms. So, one of the bedrooms had carpet in it, and then there was this TV on a coffee table, and you could, sit down and watch a film. In another room, there was sculpture by Melanie Pennington and also some paperwork on the wall by Betsy Stirratt.
Oh, cool.
And Ross Gay did this wonderful reading from his book, Inciting Joy, that was all about a potluck where you invite your sorrows to come and gather, and then everybody's got their sorrows with them and they're talking to each other. Faye had said that piece was kind of an inspiration for her to even call the gathering together in the first place. So it really made sense, and it was a nice choice for a reading. It just felt like a space that you could wander around and discover, which I think is really a really different kind of experience than most galleries.
Yeah, I do feel like we don't get enough spaces like that in Bloomington that just feel that DIY and that community built.
Exactly. It definitely felt like the community coming together to make something interesting.
I hope we get more of those.
Yeah, I do too. And I think it's such a great idea if you're moving and you have a little time between when you have to leave your old place and when you occupy your new place. Maybe consider doing an art show.
Yeah, I think we'll show up.
Definitely. I'm Kate Young.
I'm Tyler Lake, and this is Nice Work. You've been listening to Nice Work, a production of WFIU, WTIU, and Indiana Public Media. You can find us at ipm.org.
This episode was produced and edited by Tyler Lake. We get production help from Danny William, Holly Wilkerson, Carl Templeton, Eddie Stewart, Leo Pies, Jillian Blackburn, and Jonah Ballard.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Alan Davis. Additional music from Universal Production Music. The executive producer is Eric Bolstridge. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Nice work, Tyler.
Nice work, Kate.